Pretty good.
Not even. Let's see. Well, hello, everyone. This is Bryan Daniels. I'm President and CEO of the Blount Partnership, and many of you have joined me on a journey we've been going through with the community of talking about how COVID has actually affected our community and the steps taken to address the pandemic. But we're in interesting times, and that COVID is not the only topic of conversation with our community right now. So today I am joined by a sincere friend who I love very much and is a mentor of mine, and that's Miss Sharon Hannum. And I appreciate you taking the time out to be with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, it's always good to see you and visit. And I've got to be totally honest here too, in which I will through the whole thing, but this will be a topic that is uncomfortable for me, but is one that I find myself, I don't know what I don't know. And there is no one that I trust more than you and your leadership and your mentorship you've meant to me through all these years. And so I appreciate you really taking time to have an honest conversation between friends and those that are joining. If you have questions during our interview, feel free to write those in the chat box, and I'll try to get those asked to Ms. Hannum as we go through. And so, Sharon, you are such a staple in this community, and we all know you from a variety of different leadership roles you've taken, from with the aluminum company to the budget committee with the county, with the Blount Chamber Foundation, with
Blount Education Initiative.
The Blount Education Initiative, thank you.
Blount
Tennessee Achieves, Blount
Mhm.
Achieves, all those things. You've had such a leadership role, and now you've been really involved with an organization called Blount United. Can you talk to us a little bit about what Blount United is and what it means to this community?
Yes, Blount County United, Brian, was it began actually in 2015 again through my church, through St. Paul AME Zion Church, where Reverend Dr. Willa Estelle is the pastor. I always give my pastor props. I love her, and she is deserving of the recognition. But we had a prayer vigil because of an act of violence that took place in South Carolina. And it took place at one of our, I'm Methodist, which means we're connectional, and one of our sister churches in South Carolina. And that's when Dylan Roof interrupted a Bible study, and he murdered some persons who were having Bible study. And that was one of many that were happening at the time: acts of violence, gun violence, acts of hatred. So we had a prayer vigil, and that's all that was intended by St. Paul at the time, was a prayer vigil. And our church is small, but it was packed out. It was just absolutely packed out with caring individuals. So at the end of the prayer vigil, Reverend Estelle started getting phone calls and emails, where do we go from here? And it's like, we were having prayer. I didn't know we were going anywhere. And so then we had prayer about the prayer.
Wow.
And as a result, Blount County United, we're stronger together. Blount County United was born in 2015. So we're a 501c3 organization. Our program of work is broken out into 4 components: the Faith Committee, which Reverend Dr. Estelle chairs, and she's the president of the organization. I'm vice president. And the Civic Committee, which I chair, a Youth Committee, which is now chaired by Mrs. Callie Stalliard, and then an Education Committee, which is mostly about awareness of race relations and justice, social justice. And so those are the 4 committees that make up the work of the organization itself. My part, besides being vice president and some of the administrative functions that come along with that, as the Civic Committee, has produced what I'm very, very proud of, 2 works that are I'm very, very proud of, and we continue with those. And I read that covenant at the march, or the rally, Let Justice Ring rally on Sunday. And that's a covenant with all law enforcement agencies here in Blount County, all 3 of them. And we had a covenant that addressed hate crimes, integrity, character, we covenant together, Blount County United and law enforcement in the event of hate crimes here.
Yeah, when you talk about the covenant, is that the signing that was a few years ago?
Yes.
When was that?
2017.
2017, and I do remember that. It was at the public library, and you
Yes.
had a lot of the leaders there and law
Yes.
enforcement. And talk to us a little bit about what that event meant to you and to the organization.
It meant a lot to me personally because, a lot of people here in Blount County know some of my history and most probably do not. But in my younger years, I was not a proponent or a fan of law enforcement because I'm a product of the 60s. I've come a long way in my thought process. God has brought me a long way in my thought process and my attitudes. And the same is true. We've evolved in this county to a degree where we have persons in positions of leadership that embody what was really intended, I think, for government officials and by and large, and law enforcement by and large. And so the whole signing, we wanted it to be public. We wanted it to be personal. We wanted the whole community who was interested, in our government who was interested, to be a part of that signing. And so Mayor Ed Mitchell signed the document. Sheriff Barong, Chief Chris, and Chief Carswell signed the document, and then Reverend Estelle and myself. And so we have this document that addresses those issues that we work towards. So that's one of the things that is and the work is ongoing. We want to support one another. It's not just beginning and ending with the covenant, which can be found on our website for anybody who wants to view it at any time. But work is always ongoing because it's about relationship. It's about relationship, and relationships are hard work.
Oh yeah.
No matter what kind of relationship it is, and you have to be dedicated.
You have to work at it.
You have to work at it. You definitely have to work at it. And the second thing that came from the Civic Committee that I'm very, very proud of is ACT, Accelerated Candidate Training. It's a leadership development model that focuses specifically on government and nothing else, understanding it, the civics of it. How it works here, because Blount County is somewhat of an anomaly when you think about it. We have two cities and county government, all different charters, all different styles of government. And then we have all the townships that fit into things. You know that, and several people know that, but the inner workings of how that government really has to partner together and what work goes into that is something that I think every citizen in Blount County should be made aware of. It's also intended to not only do that, but to help people to have opportunity to understand that there are opportunities to serve in government other than running for an elected office. And then there's the elected office. So we believe that this model helps people to be more prepared to either live here better, or to serve here better, or to serve not only here, but look for other offices to be elected into.
So you had mentioned the march that had just occurred. Talk to us. Let me focus the camera here. Oh, wrong way.
No, it's going the right way.
No, it's not. Talk to us a little bit about this march that occurred, how it came about, and then Blount United's part of it.
Blount County United collaborated with the NAACP, which was reinstituted here in Blount County. We had a chapter some years ago, and it disbanded. And as a part of Blount County United, it was reinstituted, rechartered, got a charter back, and started over. So the Alcoa Blount County NAACP and Blount County United came together to put together the rally. It's primarily the work of the Faith Committee of Blount County United. So Reverend Estelle did most of that heavy lifting, and then NAACP and Tanya Martin, Alcoa City Commissioner, who's the secretary of the NAACP, helped do all of that heavy lifting for the organization of it and getting it together. And then we all pitched in together with trying to make it aware as broadly as we could, promoting it, communicating it as many places as we could. It came about because our hearts agreed personally as church members, as members of the NAACP, as members of Blount County United, that what we're seeing today is nothing more than systemic racism, and we still believe that many people are missing the mark, and they're looking at the what. They see rioting, they're not looking at the why. Why it all erupted all over the place in the first place.
Right.
It's hard to look at the why. Anybody who can look at a video of somebody being slowly and methodically murdered, suffocated for almost 9 minutes and not be affected by it needs some real serious self-evaluation. So it wasn't really a catalyst for bringing, because that's what we've been trying to do all along, but it's almost like the straw that broke the camel's back, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking a little bit about the violence that we had saw play out and that sort of thing. Why, in your opinion, why have we not seen the violence here per se? And maybe we have, and I've just not been aware of it, but maybe why haven't we seen the violence here? Is there something different about this community versus a more urban area like an Atlanta or Nashville that we've seen play out? Or, I'm not going to exclude Minneapolis because that's where the event took place, but across the country, we've been seeing this outpouring. And it's not by just people of color. It is all races that we see in unity that are joining into this. Talk to me a little bit about your opinion of how Blount County responds to tragic events like this.
And I'm glad you asked for my opinion, because I do want to say my voice is not the voice for everyone, but I think that since I do fall in that generation where civil unrest was very, very high, 50 plus years ago, 51, 57 years ago, and how it was handled then is vastly different everywhere than it's handled here. I think one of the reasons that we don't see as much of it as other places do, particularly larger urban areas, is they have a different set of issues to begin with. We have poverty here, but they have it at a higher rate. We have unemployment here, but it's higher rate there. Some of the issues around transportation that we experience here, they experience there. So it just seems to be magnified in some areas. Then we also have the issue of a lack of integrity across the board in government everywhere. Not that we have achieved and attained here, but I think that there has been, on a large number of fronts, some deliberate efforts to engage in conversation and to build relationships in some areas that needed those bridges to be joined together. When you live in a community like Blount County, we're kind of slow and sleepy, and it's very white, and people tend to kind of, you only see what you're exposed to.
Right.
And so if you're not exposed to certain aspects of what happens in other areas of the community, then you're blind to what goes on there. So until somebody shares with a Bryan Daniels or other persons that it's not as pretty as you think, because you don't visit these areas, you don't live the way we have to live, you don't experience what we experience every single day, it's easy for you to miss it because it doesn't pertain to you, it doesn't affect you personally.
And I've told you this before, I look back, I'm a Generation Xer, and I have been thankful truly my entire life that I became aware that I didn't grow up during the 60s, because the images that I see was so polarizing that I am of the generation that we were the fruit of your generation, of which when I see your son and when I've interacted with him, I see him as that would be somebody, if he lived here full time, I would enjoy just spending time with. And for me, I've been thankful that those struggles that occurred back then, I didn't have to live through. Now, with that being said, the recent events that have been transpiring, and I'm not just going to limit them to just Minneapolis, but even before then, things last several years. Just this polarizing effect of the country. You know, I find myself in this uneasy situation of, I have really thought that all men are created equal, and that you're intelligent, you got to have the drive, and if you do, you have the opportunities to be successful. Now, I clearly know that that's not the case. I've seen some great videos to even educate me on, you know, you don't know what it's like as a teenager. And it was a powerful video I saw of a coach was talking to these young men about football, and was talking about how athletes were performing, and was talking about, some of you have extra time to perform because you go home, you don't have to worry about being hungry, you don't have to worry about taking care of parents. Some kids are having to go get a job to help pay a cell phone bill or try to keep the lights on in their homes. And just how far of an advance you have with just that life afforded you. And so it's been eye-opening for me of just seeing how it's not all just equal all the time. It's just not. And with that being said, what recommendations would you think for our community? And then I'll go to the U.S., but what do you think our actions as business leaders, I'll keep the business right now, business leaders could be to help make sure everybody gets a chance to be successful? How does the business community plug in here?
I think in a couple of different categories, it would be somewhat the same, yet different. I'll start with small business. Most small businesses here in Blount County that I'm aware of would have a unique set of challenges that the larger businesses or corporate types of environments don't have. So they start small. Their audience or their population that you're attempting to serve is much smaller because they don't have the same kind of employee base, which means they still don't have, or at least while they're still in that category of small business, the same resources to do some things to impact change. But first and foremost would be in their HR departments. If they have a department, if it's the owner, then the owner. We have to look at being intentional in our relationships and in our hiring practices and policies. If there are none, you know, living in a right to work state is different than some other places. And so you have to be your own barometer. You have to set your own policies, your own guidelines, and you're going to be as fair as you can be personally. So if you don't really look at that, then what you do is you hire according to who you know. A lot of the hiring practices here in Blount County is who you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's
it's
right.
Word of mouth.
Yeah,
You know,
it's relationships.
It's
really
relationships.
It is.
And so that leaves a lot of minorities out of the conversation because they're not in the same circles that Bryan Daniels is in or in that business owner. So they tend to hire who they know. And then if they happen to grow large enough to be able to recruit a little bit, they recruit in the areas that they know. So what they do is they're maintaining the sameness, people that look like them, people that think like them, people that act like them. And so it becomes systemic, okay, even in that small environment. And then when you're talking about much larger businesses who have the ability and capability of recruiting worldwide or regionally, what is your practice? Where do you look? Are you looking with intentionality to have your business to look more like the community in which it lives? And as the community changes, as the demographic changes, are you in tune enough with what's happening in the community as a whole and not just what affects your business to be able to incorporate that into your hiring practices, policies, and procedures, and your intentionality? What is your own view? Attitude reflects leadership, whether it's corporate leadership or whether it's private leadership. And so what message are you sending out to your employees? Because they're going to follow your lead.
Right.
So we have some great examples of it here in Blount County. We have some poor examples of it here in Blount County. So it then becomes about, is this the way you want to be? Or do you have other choices? Would you like to see change? What do you want for your business? Or is it all about the bottom line?
So as it relates to business, flipping that switch, what can the citizens of our community do to be impactful?
One of the things that I have learned over time in my own efforts, and I had to be deliberate in my relationship building, because I wasn't invited to the chamber. I wasn't invited to some places. I showed up at those places. I showed up at those places because there were some issues burning on my own heart because it affected me personally. And I've shared it with many people in many places, and that's because of my son. I became a mother at 22, and he means the world to me. And I always wanted to be the kind of parent that he was going to look up to and that he could be proud of. I also became aware by the time he was at middle school that he would leave and he wouldn't be back here to live. And the challenges for a young Black man are vastly different than for a young white man. And while I don't have any birth daughters, I have a lot of adopted daughters. And the challenges for young Black females is astronomical. So if we equate life to a totem pole, there's nothing lower on the totem pole of life than Black females. I experienced that myself in all areas of my life. So when you think about the challenges and the barriers and the hurdles that we face as Black people, as people of color, now we have more brown people coming into our communities. And so we want to embrace them as well. We have a lot of, in my opinion, policies, procedures, legislative statutes that need to be changed to be more inclusive and more inviting. If we want to be an inviting community, we can't be just one or two individuals here or there that are being loving and inviting, but all of us as a body of, I'm going back to my church language, but we're one body. Mm-hmm. And to be united, we have to be of one accord. And while we understand that what benefits one population more than others, we really have to find that common ground where it benefits everybody. And then you broaden your conversation base. You have more people at the table and not just a seat at the table, but you at least have to have that.
Right.
So that people can be brought in.
So as being a person of color, what's it like have lived your life here? I mean, I would like your put that in context for me, what it's been like here.
Well, it's not really been fun. Segregation happened and I was snatched out of my safe, protected environment and placed in an environment where I was not wanted. And from that point on, it's always been that for me. When you think about, everybody's thinking about their good old days, growing up, ours got compromised very early. And it's never been the same since. So for people, back in my more militant days, with that language, they wanted segregation and they wanted it to stay. Guess what? We did too, for the most part.
Right. I remember one of our members talking about, and they were a person of color, of when desegregation happened. You were talking about the comfort zones. This person grew up in Memphis, and Memphis had a very overwhelming, predominant middle class Black community. And then when desegregation happened, it got decimated because everybody got pushed around, and Memphis still deals with trying to address that inequity that goes on there.
We had it too. Yeah. We had it here in Maryville, right around where my church is, in that whole area, coming over here to where the chamber is now sitting. Right. There, we had our own businesses, we had our own markets, we had our own everything, and there was this invisible line somewhere around McCammon-Ammons funeral home, coming this way, except for the back part. There were all of those, people think it's stereotypical, but it's very, very true. On the other side of the tracks, there were some railroad tracks that were boundaries. There were some invisible lines that were boundaries. The city of Maryville had a large population of African Americans and middle class African Americans. That's why our churches are located where they are.
Okay.
Yeah. We didn't have everybody, at least around in my neighborhoods, that had cars and were able to get around and go to work and that kind of thing. But you could mostly walk to most places. So from McCammon-Ammons, if we use Broadway as one barometer, you go all the way to Foothills Mall Drive.
Wow.
And coming this backside. So yeah. And it did get decimated with urban renewal.
Right.
So all of the places where you see McGee Terrace Apartments and Parkside and all of those, that was Maryland.
Wow.
And it was African American businesses and homeowners.
Wow.
My school was sitting right where there's a circle near Home Away from Home.
Okay. Yeah.
My school sat right there at that circle.
Wow. So you had mentioned your son you'd realized that he would not stay here and would go on for other opportunities. And I'm sure with the leadership qualities you've had numerous opportunities to move to areas that maybe you feel more comfortable, whether that would be Atlanta or Nashville or wherever it could be. Why'd you stay?
Relationships and family. I came dangerously close to cut and run. I had an offer for a job at a pharmaceutical company in Atlanta. Todd was 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I came dangerously close. My father had already passed away. My brother and sister had moved away. Mom was here and she wouldn't go.
Wow.
So I gave up what I wanted to stay here and just tough it out. And truthfully, I think God was also speaking to me, cutting and running is the easy way out.
Well, anybody that knows you knows that you're not one that scares, and that you are an intelligent, thoughtful woman that will speak her mind, but you also look at the broader spectrum of the impact your words make. And I'm a firm believer and a witness to we're all better for having you here than having you go away somewhere.
Thank you.
You talk to us a little bit of what all you've been engaged with. I mean, I touched on it a little bit briefly, but just so folks that really don't know you that well, just for me, tell me about all the activities or entities that you engage with to try to move this community forward.
I think that it's probably easier to segment some things because, I've forgotten some of the things that I've done and some of the organizations that I've served with. But education has always been a big one for me. I'm a proponent of education. It was taught to us, in our church, our mentors, our church leaders, my family. We've always valued education. And when I didn't get to go to college, it meant even more. And so again, a lot of what I do is all about relationships that I have with others. And so primarily family. Family's always first with me, always has been. People laugh every time I say it, but the truth of the matter is the personality that God gave me is dual. I'm a Gemini, so it's like sometimes I'm two people in one. But primarily, I'm introverted. So this whole pandemic thing.
Wow, you're introverted.
If given my own devices, if God leaves me alone and there's nothing that really fires me up, I'll stay home. I'd rather be home or lead from behind and push somebody else out front, but it just hasn't worked out that way for me. But that would be my preference. But education is one that I highly value. The other is workforce development. And from the standpoint of a Black female and from the standpoint of Black males, in my growing up time in the 60s, 70s, there wasn't much for us here. So even if you got the education and you attained that, you couldn't come back here. There was nothing for you here.
Right.
Unless you were going to hang your own shingle. And then were there enough Blacks or people of color or caring people altogether that would support your business? So we ended up losing the best and brightest of the African Americans here to someplace else. Um, so workforce development has always been something. Then anything that smacks of injustice flies in my face. It offends me. If it offends me personally and morally, um, I have to do something about that, or try to do something about that, or try to make a difference. Of course, God has grown me up a lot in the years. I don't talk the way I used to talk. Sometimes I want to. Sometimes I want to. But you know, when you mature, and when your relationships and the work that goes into relationships begins to pay off, then you know, some things can change, but not enough until relationship building becomes the norm for everybody, and the desire to work at those relationships remains.
So with your involvement, and I'm not one bit surprised you're in a leadership role with Blount United, where does Blount United go now? Not to say that your programming's changed because of Minneapolis, but I have to believe that this is an opportunity too to really push forward on initiatives, because right now this is in front of everyone. Wherever you are on the issue, it's in front of everyone. Where does Blount United go right now, do you suspect?
Well, we haven't met since February. The stay-at-home orders came in March before our meeting, because we meet the last Saturday of each month. Both the NAACP and Blount County United meet on that same day. And so during the first month, you know, as we talked about, because we really didn't think it was going to last that long. We were really thinking, you know, a couple of weeks.
Right.
And so we just kind of were waiting.
Yeah.
And then when it got pushed out, it's like, you know, our lives, our ministry, our work, for all of those agencies or both of those organizations couldn't just stop. So what were we going to do? So COVID-19, as awful as it has been and as difficult as it has been, has challenged all of us. Not just Blount County United, but our NAACP, but our churches, our businesses, to do things differently, to embrace some possibilities that we were afraid to embark on before, because we thought that it was going to be too hard, or we couldn't do it, or we weren't going to be able to finance it. So we've begun to research and embrace technology platforms for doing some of the work. And we found that, as everybody else is finding, I'm sure, that one of the silver linings to this awful thing called COVID-19 is that it can't stop the work, where there's a true desire for the work to continue. So we're meeting via Zoom platform. We our church services stream Facebook Live.
Yeah.
Many of you have gotten some invites from me at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings. NAACP is meeting via Zoom and conference calls, and you know, whatever platform we find that we can move and continue to engage in the work, we're doing that. It also has caused us to vision out a little bit further, because now, you know, we recognize that using some different kind of vehicles and not always trying to corral people in one single place at a specific time may offer us some dual opportunities for furthering the work of education and just social justice and all of the things that's part of the program of work for both of these organizations.
So it sounds like you're really keeping your stakeholders safe, but then also reaching a whole other segment possibly that has not been engaged with you before.
Especially young adults that find it very, very difficult. In your generation, yours and Todd's generation, you know, you're not really interested in spending as much time on certain endeavors, meetings, and that kind of thing. My generation will meet, you know, to meet. And because that's the way we've always done it, you know. And so, you know, younger people, not so much. They don't mind meeting, but they want you to have an agenda. They want you to stay on topic. They want you to make it as easy for them as possible, because they got other things to do.
Yeah.
And so what that has introduced, I'll speak personally, me too, is I won't stop doing all the things that I'm doing, but how I do them. is going to change. Now I'm no longer interested in going back to doing things the same way. And so if there's an opportunity for some dual meetings to take place, you can choose either or. If you don't have 4 hours to commit, which most people do not, you know, you can take the travel time out and you can still attend the meeting, still have input, or we could have face-to-face while others Zoom in or call in or whatever what fits your schedule better. You're still creating this atmosphere of being inclusive and inviting people and then hearing what they have to say. And so it helps us to practice listening better. I have found that I listen better on conference calls because sometimes in face-to-face, I get distracted by your body language or what's going on this side.
Right.
But when you can't see somebody, you have to listen more, and we all have to practice our listening skills better, in my opinion.
Well, with Blount United and really in your life too, Pastor Zell has had an indelible touch and effect on you. I know that when we inducted you into the Chambers Hall of Fame out back, Pastor Zell, and when you've been recognized in other times, Pastor Zell has been by your side. Talk to us a little bit about her.
She is absolutely a phenomenal woman. I love her. I was really excited. She's our first female pastor. St. Paul's been around for hundreds of years. As a matter of fact, we celebrated 175 years. And so in her arrival, I was so excited because God had moved me into some of the women's issues and women's rights and that kind of thing at the time. And I was so excited for her to be coming. People look at her and they see this small, petite person, you know, and they'll fool around and discount her a little bit, you know, because looks can be deceiving. And I find that we're kindred spirits. So she is my pastor. She is my spiritual leader. She is all of those things, but she's also my friend. And she's a woman of integrity. And she is a woman who is a true shepherd. Some people I don't think they really understand what a shepherd is meant to do and to be, but she shepherds not only her own flock, but she has a heart for people in general. So that's what makes her a good shepherd, a good leader of people, because she truly cares about people. She's compassionate and kind. And so, you know, I could go on with a number of her attributes and not run out of something to say. So I'm grateful for the time that she's been with us. She's been with us 19 years, and it certainly doesn't feel like it. I thank God for sending her our way, and I think Blount County, not just St. Paul and not just the city of Maryville, but Blount County as a whole, it's going to be so much better by her having come our way.
Well, we're very fortunate to have both of you in our community and not leaving and making us all better and more educated, definitely. And there's a common tie in this community, having open dialogue like this, having it with, I consider you family, to where you can be vulnerable, but then also be touched by another person's comments and words and feelings, and appreciate what you've done there. I'm looking, it looks like we're about to really run out of time. Already. You get you and me in a room, we can talk another hour. But really, thank you for making time to sit down with us and have this conversation. And I hope is not the only conversation, that this is, I feel like we've had dialogue before, but there just seems to be maybe something about this moment in time that seems more impactful. So
I hope it's not the last either, because there's so many opportunities, I think, for the chamber to be a catalyst, you know, in some things. You've helped me tremendously in everything that I've ever been involved and engaged in. And so I'm sure that there's opportunities for more than that. I like talking to you. So.
Well, as we, as a community, the struggles that we've had is we don't have enough labor force. And even though the economy has recently slowed, that's just a short blip on our screen, that the world looks different in that we have to be engaging and inviting for everyone to want to feel a part of our community. And we want to keep those that grew up here, because why not try to stay home and make your community better? So I think this is going to be a dialogue that's going to continue to be with us, because again, we're trying to bring more people here that are of working ages to help advance our community forward. And I know that we will have you involved in those conversations as a real thought leader for our community.
Well, I hope so. And there's some people that are currently here that I hope that we're able to keep here. And I think the Workforce Development Center, believe it or not, Bryan, is not as widely known about as we would think.
Wow.
And so the work of Mississippi State Community College, of which I am a proud board member, this is my last year.
You'll replace it with something else. I know you too well.
No, I'm just gonna grow what I already have if I can. But the whole work and the pulling together of education and the Workforce Development Center is really going to help solidify, in my opinion, that middle base, not the professional base, but that middle base that is so lacking right now, or becoming harder to fill for the business and the job market. We really have to keep on with the education initiatives, making sure our children can get to college or certified or associate's degrees, whatever it takes for them to have viable careers and settle here and make this the best place that Blount County can be moving forward, being inclusive, being engaged and involved in our government, in our chambers, and not seeing it as some good old boy network, really changing the vibe and the dynamic here, and that they would have a desire to stay here, work here, and raise their children here.
Well, thank you for those efforts. Thank you all for joining us. And we will join you all again on our next community conversation series. Have a great day. Bye-bye.